Alright, it's time to do another JoJo Bizarre Adventure What If. So, today's What If is what would happen if Loggins did not die. For those who do not remember Loggins, which I'm pretty sure there's quite a few because he didn't really have that long of a time to be in the series, he was one of Lisa's mini instructors, along with the Nappa of JoJo himself, Machina. yeah, I'm gonna keep reminding you guys that Machina is Nappa. But anyway, back to the video. So he was a mentor for Joseph and Caesar to help them improve on Hamon, and then he died to ACDC. But what if he didn't die to ACDC? You may be wondering. Uh, Here's this video. We obviously clicked on it to know the answer, so let's talk about it. But let's give a big thanks to the man who requested this. What if Dyer? Yep, Dyer. So, one Hamon master to another, making another Hamon master living. Yeah, it's pretty good. That's a pretty fitting fate. So, yeah, minus from that, let's talk about the legit what if, because it seems like it'd be an interesting what if to talk about. So, obviously, we gotta prevent Loggins from dying. So, in this alternative universe, to find a way to prevent Loggins from dying, the only few ways I could think of is Loggins either somehow kills ACDC, or Loggins is able to defeat ACD, or Loggins is saved by Joseph last minute. And this could be one of those things where Joseph like comes in during the fight before Loggins could die, or maybe in this alternative universe, Joseph comes in during the beginning or middle half and they work together instead. Or maybe Joseph and Loggins just go at the same time and that's when the fight happens. Or Loggins just doesn't arrive at all and Joseph just has to do it by himself with no Loggins around, I guess. So in this alternative universe, Loggins' death will be prevented. Now, another thing that will happen is that the whole ACDC brain thing is likely prevented from happening. So in this alternative universe, we would not get ACDC's brain possessing Susie Q. So I guess in this timeline, Joseph and Caesar would likely, not Joseph and Caesar, but Joseph and Susie would have a more normal first interaction for them. So I guess that's good for them. But another alternative route, assuming you want to do the brain thing, is if Loggins somehow kills ACDC on his own, or something like that, then Loggins could carry the brain and then maybe someone else could take the place. Maybe Susie Q still, or maybe it could be someone else. I don't know. Probably Susie Q. And everything, I guess, can go the same, but Loggins is the one who brings it in. In my opinion, we'll just assume that Joseph and Loggins already have that dealt with, but it wouldn't have no effect no matter what. Well, obviously, Loggins, hopefully still healthy, would just go with them to Switzerland. Otherwise, if he just stays back or if he's injured from the fight, then everything would just go the same. But we're keeping him around. He's going to Switzerland with the boys. At least Lisa. So after that, we go to Switzerland, and that's where we meet Stroheim, who returns as a cyborg. Obviously, we get the Cars versus Stroheim fight, with Joseph still there. That goes the same. I don't really see Loggins really needing to get involved in there. Caesar still saves Joseph, etc., etc. After that is the Wamu fight, where, in this alternative universe, Caesar's death is kind of tricky to say. Now, in this universe, Loggins more or less depends on how he views the situation. I could maybe see him and Machina going together, maybe. If one of them gets injured, maybe the other one stays behind and helps Caesar. Maybe in this universe, Caesar could kill Wamu, or Caesar at least doesn't get killed. On another hand, maybe Loggins decides to stay back, and Caesar still gets killed. Now, this is kind of tough, and honestly, I'm a bit 50-50 on this one. On one hand, I could see there being a good chance, or you can make a good argument that Loggins coming in the story would have saved Caesar, and that Loggins would be with Machina since they're bros, and he would want to help out Caesar. And maybe if one of them do get injured, the other one can aid Caesar against Wamu. I mean, if Machina was able to put up a fight against Caesar, or at least a good enough fight, I could assume a 2-on-1 they should be able to defeat Wamu, in my honest opinion. I don't know how strong or weak Loggins is compared to Machina. I don't think it's ever been canonically stated, unless you guys have some kind of evidence on who's the stronger of the two. But it's possible Caesar could live. Or in this timeline, maybe Loggins just can't do much and Caesar just dies. Maybe Loggins gets injured with Machina or something. Who knows? But regardless, either Caesar's still around and he could still travel along, or he's probably injured and has to miss out the part, or he's dead. Maybe Wamu could get killed in this timeline, who knows? Now, I don't think too much is going to change after that, but if I'm being honest, I do believe that Loggins would probably just get injured or maybe even killed by cars, debatably, in the final fight. This could potentially happen. I could see Loggins maybe getting involved. Assuming Caesar's still alive, he could also probably get involved. I'm assuming Machina's still injured in this timeline, so his whole thing goes the same. But Loggins would help out. But Loggins could maybe help out, and if Caesar's also alive, he could maybe help out too. But that more or less depends on if they would want to help him out at the end. I don't think too much of Part 2 is going to really change at the end of the day. I mean, Loggins would obviously be there. I think he could aid. I think he would aid in making the AC/DC fight shorter, so he's taken out faster. Debatably, Wombu could be taken out faster. So, in other words, we'd be missing out on 2 fights, and we would just be all the way into, we would have probably had a little bit of a shorter battle tendency. Just a little bit shorter. So, by that logic, Part 2 definitely could have ended faster. Joseph still dies, but obviously he's not dead and crashes his own funeral. So, I don't really think too much would really change. And overall, as a whole in Part 2, the only change is that Loggins is living, like the video suggests, and there's maybe a good chance Caesar might live. That's honestly up to you. It more or less depends on what you think Loggins' views on that moment would have been like. Now, normally I really wouldn't think about Part 3 or onwards, but assuming you want me to talk about the future parts, I'm just going to talk about 3 only, and I will just throw in 4, 5, and 6, and I'm pretty sure those parts would probably have some changes, maybe. Realistically, I'm pretty sure Loggins would just die off screen. If Loggins can somehow make it into Part 3, maybe Machina's here? I mean, maybe Machina stopped training on Hamon after 2, but if Machina's training on Hamon but if Machina, and maybe if Loggins' survival makes Machina more motivated to train on Hamon, and maybe if Caesar's alive and he can motivate him too, maybe they train together, and this can maybe even motivate Joseph, potentially. That's assuming you put them in Part 3, and if Caesar's in Part 3, then maybe you can add Rose and Julius in the part, which I would personally add them in. That is one thing that could potentially happen. Maybe Lisa could potentially become an ally. I don't know. It more or less depends on if she would have had a stand during the story, so I'll leave that up to you. As a whole, I don't really think Part 3 or onwards could have changed. I feel like if we're being realistic, Loggins would just be out with Machina and they'd just be doing their own thing. Whether they'd be dead by old age or just chilling and relaxing while the Crusaders do their fight together. Because I don't know if Loggins or Machina would have a stand. Assuming that one of them are in the part, or both of them, I potentially could see one of the Crusaders living, or maybe multiple of the Crusaders living. Arguably, you can just have, maybe you could have it so that both die, so Kakyoin and Avdol can both, in like Kakyoin and Avdol's spot. And then Iggy could probably live because Avdol's fire. Caesar living could potentially lead to Kakyoin's survival, assuming that's the case. Assuming that Machina or Loggins doesn't take the place of revealing the world's power. Honestly, if I'm having a choice, I'd rather sacrifice like Machina or Loggins over Caesar, to be honest, to die to Dio, assuming Caesar's a factor in this timeline. And then, like, if we're talking about, like, 4 and onwards, I don't really think too much would change. I could see, like, Kakyoin, like, appearing in Part 4. I could see Rose being there in Part 4, too. And then, like, they could probably marry, and then they could have Tenmei still, and he can show up in Stone Ocean. Golden Wind could probably have, like, Caesar, Polnareff, Julius, and Iggy working together. And in Stone Ocean, I could see Julius there. I don't know about Polnareff. Avdol, it could probably be in, like, Diamond is Unbreakable, and I could see him doing the Italy investigation in Part 5. And then you could add Frito into the story as well, maybe. And, like, the Morio cast could be there, too, maybe. If you exclude Frito, then I could see Abakio maybe living. Narancia would live, since I think Iggy could, like, take his spot or something. I don't know, this one's kind of tough, but I'm pretty much certain I don't really know if I would add Machida and or Loggins into Part 3. I don't really think I would, personally. If you would add him into part 3, then that's your opinion. If you think Caesar should live, you can let me know. Tell me your kind of personal timeline in the comments, who you would have like survive and die. Would Loggins live? Would Loggins die? Like, would Loggins die against cars in your opinion? Would he die off screen? Does he show up in Stardust Crusaders and die? Would Tenmei be? Would Machina be in part 3? Still, would Machina somehow show up in part 3? Would Caesar survive part 2 and make it to part 3? Let's have a discussion. We could talk about what you guys would like to see in this alternative universe. Maybe your own little twist and your own little opinions on what you agree and disagree with on this timeline. So that's really all I got to say on that part of the story, and that's kind of all I got to say about the what if as a whole. I don't really have anything else I got to add, unless you guys want me to make a timeline in the comments, which I'm not against, and I could maybe think of something to include, but I don't really have a full timeline in my head yet. I'm just naming off some ideas of what I could see happening, and if I were to make up a timeline, I'd personally have Caesar live in part 2, and for like part 3, if Loggins and Machina are both there, I could probably just sacrifice Machina and Loggins so they could take the Kakyoin and Abdel death spots, and I could see Iggy living. Caesar can have Julius and Rose, and then the OG Crusaders, like all 6 of them, plus Caesar, plus Julius and Rose would all live. So we would get those 9 to live. Then Machina and Loggins could be like the only casualties for Stardust Crusaders. And then for like Diamond is Unbreakable, I'd throw in like Abdul, Kakyoin, and Rose in the parts. Joseph would be more healthy because of his hormone training. I wouldn't really kill off none of them there and on, in my opinion, and I'd have them all live. Abdul can come into part 5 with Josuke and Okuyasu, Koichi and Rohan, and then I would introduce a new Zeppeli named Frito, and then I would add that to the story. Abakio's death I'd keep the same. Bruno has his whole thing where he dies a bunch of times. Fugo, I'd keep him alive, still like how he was. I'd have Fugo still live, obviously. I'd have Fugo live like he does in canon, but I would also have him join the group in this alternative universe, and I feel like Iggy can just take the death spot of Narazia by using his sand clone hacks. But that's really all I could see for like part 5. And Caesar could just take the place, and the Caesar I think could die somewhere in the story, and I would have Abdul be the one who's stuck in Coco Jumbo. And for part 6, I would include Tenmei in the part, and I would have Josuke, Okuyasu, Koichi, and Rohan join. Joseph would also join because of his hormone training, obviously. And I could see Julius and Polnareff maybe making some kind of appearance in the part. As for who lives and dies, I'd have Hermes actually take the death spot in the punishment ward, like the one that originally FF died in. I'd have Hermes die there personally. I'd like for Rikill to turn good, and I actually think he would in this timeline, since I actually think the cast would be more accepting of him, since Hermes is out of the story. And plus, I think there'd be more characters who would probably actually respect Rikill in this alternative universe. Weather Report's death would happen regardless. I don't really think there's a way to prevent the whole heavy weather thing from happening, so he still dies when he originally dies. I guess when it comes to the final fight, I think Foo Fighters can die to, like, Sea Moon with Okuyasu. Those two can die there. And I personally would have, like, Rikill die, like, to Made in Heaven as, like, a sacrifice. I could see Anasui actually surviving Pucci's attack, since Josuke can heal him. Assuming Jotaro is fast enough to move him into Josuke's range with Time Stop, which I think he can. I think Josuke would be close enough to heal Anasui, and I think Anasui would survive the attack. And I think Jotaro would also survive the attack that originally killed him because of Diver Down. And I think Joseph can do like some kind of sacrifice and like save the day. And I also think Polnareff probably does some kind of death. Maybe Polnareff dies here as well, which I think he probably would. Arguably he lives, but I think he can die to like pass the torch of fast stand to Pucci. But that's like all I could say. And that's all I got to say about the timeline. And that's like how my version of it would go. Tell me yours in the comments. And special thanks to Dyer for requesting this what if. Normally I don't really do as many requests as I used to. It's more or less because it's got to do with my anxiety, but I'm relaxing better now and I'm more relaxed. The weekly scheduled things, they're not coming back yet. I don't know when I'll bring them back. Probably not for a while until I'm mentally better to do this YouTube stuff. I need to be more relaxed, etc. So yeah, I'm just gonna upload videos randomly for a while. But hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was a good video, and I hope you did find some enjoyment out of this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.